Okay, back on the Sylvania 17-inch set. When I last left off, I had pulled the circuit board and had a lot of work to do on it, and that is now complete. As you can see from looking at the circuit board, replaced a lot of caps, all the paper and wax caps in the board, as well as several resistors. There's also several resistors that I left in, and the reason for that is those resistors basically checked right on specs. So not too bad, quite a bit of resistors, but still quite a few left in the board. So the only thing left that I have left to do on this board is I still have one cap that goes here. It's an oddball value that I don't keep on hand. I have that out on order. There is a selenium diode right here, and I haven't messed with that. It checks okay, and we'll wait and see what the performance is once we get the board back in. But the good news with that is that if it is bad, in fact bad, I should be able to service that without unwrapping all the wires and getting the board back out. So not too concerned about that, but I am rolling the dice on a couple of items. First and foremost is these K networks, or, well, I guess that's a Philco term, or couplets. Well, they are K networks in this model as well. I guess that's the correct term. There are 4 of them on the board. And what they are is a component that contains both resistors and capacitors. Pretty common for this time period when the set was built. And they are checkable to some degree. And they are rebuildable. There's lots of guys that rebuild these couplets and and reinstall them. And a lot of sets, they're notorious for failure. So I don't know. I don't know anything about the set. I don't know anything about the history of how well these perform. So I'm basically rolling the dice. I could rebuild these and try to reinstall them, but if they're okay, I don't think I want to go through all that right now. The other piece is, I think I mentioned the last time that this electrolytic can cap would be coming out. I've kind of rethought that. Did some checking on that cap, and it's a 3-section cap. And it's testing very well as far as capacitance, the 3 capacitances that are in it, and it's not open. So I'm pretty much thinking I'm going to leave it in. And the biggest reason I'm going to leave it in for now, and I'm really rolling the dice on this because I think if it's causing problems going forward, I'm going to have to remove it. But it has some big lugs on it, and these foil connections are very, very weak. So I think it'll be very, very difficult to remove. Not that I'm trying to hide from that. If it is bad, if it is causing performance issues later on, going to have to deal with it. And most conventional wisdom says, a cap of this age in a 1959 set should definitely be replaced. But I'm going to roll the dice here and see if I can leave that in and get away with it. As far as changing all those components, I didn't have too much trouble with all these traces in this board. It's definitely not high quality by any standard today. And I did have a few traces lift up off the board, but I was able to bend leads and get it resoldered correctly, and everything's okay, I think. There were a lot of bad solder connections, as I spoke about in the last video, and I went through and tried to correct those. But very definitely very fragile solder traces, and not an easy board to work on. But if you take your time and you're careful on these types of boards, they're not a problem. All the pots have been cleaned, and like I said, this board's pretty much done. And then I moved on to testing tubes, all the tubes in the set, and I was very pleasantly surprised. These are all the good tubes. All the tubes in the set worked very well, except that I had four that tested very poorly. And it's not surprising that two of them were original Sylvania tubes, and then I forget which tubes these are for sure. These are in the video IF right here. They're 3 BZ6s. They were bad, but I've got some tubes on order. I do not have any replacements for this in my stash, so I'll have those coming in soon, so not too bad. Only 4 tubes bad. Then it was on to the restoration on the chassis, the underside of the chassis. And as you can see, I've gone ahead and started some replacement of the caps in here. And then a lot of these caps, some of these caps I've had to place an order. Normally I keep pretty much everything that you would find in a vintage TV on hand at 630 volts. And I have a few 1,000 volt caps, but there's a lot of 1,000. There's even a couple of 1,600 volt caps in this chassis that I did not have, and I did not have the correct values, so I've got an order on that. Surprisingly, I've checked all the power resistors in this underneath the chassis, and every one of these power resistors are in perfect specs. So I was real happy about that. I mean, I have these resistors on hand to replace, but they're checking perfect, so I'm going to leave them alone. And this choke checks out really good. So you can see here I've removed one of the filter caps. These are really cool because they're held in with this 1/4-inch nut and these bands that hold them in place, nice and sturdy. But they're a little bit different than your normal metal can that goes through the chassis. There's no chassis connections or chassis ground. Everything is wires coming out of these caps. So I think I said beforehand I'm going to restuff those, and that's still my plan. Here's the cap that goes beside that one. It's the first mainline cap. It's a 150 microfarad 200 volt cap, and I've already removed it and already taken the guts out of it. And this is really interesting because these caps are not any different than the metal caps that you'll find. For instance, here is the this is all the glue that held the original electrolytic cap material in. And as you can see, I basically use a wine bottle opener and screw it in. And then with these caps, you can just hold this cap in one hand and you hold your wine bottle opener in the other and crack this tar-like glue that they use to hold the electrolytic part of the cap in, and just crack it out. Now normally on a metal cap I would simply take my heat gun, okay, and heat up the outside of the metal cap and then pull the insides out, and then after that you have a lot of this that will be molten when you pull it out, but then it hardens up later and you have to deal with that in order to restuff the cap. But with these, there's two things. First of all, if you heat this up too much, you can ruin the integrity of the outside of this. This is kind of waxy, and then also the writing on it can be smeared. And then the other thing is, I don't know if you can see that or not, but all I had to do, see, that's really clean in there. All I had to do was take a screwdriver that was all real brittle and just kind of pluck the screwdriver down in there, and all of it came out. So this cap is completely clean. And if I'd have heated it, I could have pulled everything out, but then it would have hardened up again and I would have had the same problem. So it's really nice that if you can just crack it, you got to use a little bit of strength and muscle, but if you can just crack it and get it loose, it'll make all this stuff, which is really brittle and nasty and all that. You can see these pieces are they just kind of break apart. But if you get this hot enough, this will melt like you would a normal metal cap. But this just came right out. So the new cap that is going in that is this is a big Sprague 150 microfarad 300 volt cap. This cap's going to go right into that. So it'll go right in there, and of course I'll be connecting some wiring to it. They had black and gray. I only had black and white, but and the wires will be fed out of this hole, and then it will go right back in here, and then one side of it connects to the selenium rectifier, and the other side goes to ground over here. You can see right there where I clipped it out. Clipped it out right there. And I'll do the same thing on this one, although there's several different colored wires coming out of that. That's a 4-section cap with a black ground wire coming out, going to various connections here. But I'll do the same thing. I'll have several different caps, and I'll be able to restuff those inside that tube. And so when I'm done, and I've got everything wired up, I'll be able to reinstall this, and it'll look just like it did before I started working on it. So that's where I'm at. Got a lot more wax caps replacing here, like I said, but some of these are oddball values and or voltage amounts that I don't have on hand, but I have them all on order. So when those come in, I'll replace all these and hopefully have both of these restuffed and reconnected. And then the next step will be to get the circuit board and reinstall it to the chassis, hook up all the wires, and then we'll get to do a first post-restoration power-up, which is always interesting. And on this one, I'm going to do it live on camera. So if I hook up something wrong or I wire something wrong, it's going to pop and smoke, and you guys are going to get to see it. So But hopefully that won't happen. Hopefully that won't happen, and then we'll see what our new baseline is on the set, and we'll go from there. Okay, thanks for watching.